The topic is scaling and decoding B2B SaaS product management. And for this, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Deepak Subramanian, Senior Director Product at Target, Mr. Srinivasa Raghavachar, Senior Director and Chief Product Expert at SAP Labs, Mr. Siddharth Sehgal, Director of Product Management at PayU, Mr. Lokesh Tripath, Director Product Management and Product Design. And moderating this session, I would like to invite Mr. Arun Iyer, Lead Principal Product Manager at Bajaj Finserv. A brief intro about Arun. Arun is a mentor, industry speaker, and a leadership development consultant. He has presented many keynotes at NASSCOM industry events, and an experienced product manager and a consultant. Over to you, Arun, to introduce the panel and start the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Did everyone have their lunch? Yes? Good? Was it good? Okay. So let me take a quick moment to introduce our panel. We have Mr. Lokesh Tripath, Director PM at Intuit. Mr. Siddharth Sehgal, Director PM at Product Management at PayU. Mr. Srinivasa Raghavachar, who is Senior Director and leads the cloud transition at SAP. And Mr. Deepak Subramanian, Senior Director Product Management at Target. This panel, extremely distinguished, eminent speakers, industry stalwarts, will be speaking about how enterprise or B2B product management works. How many here have worked in or are co-founding a B2B enterprise product management startup? I see 3 or 4 hands, okay. And how did it feel? Do you remember the days when you probably started out with a lot of passion, saying, okay, I want to build a B2C startup, change the world, and then realize that stickiness in revenue probably comes from B2B. Let's start off with that and then figure out how to expand the market, right? So let's get started with a few questions. So enterprises and enterprise product management often start by working very closely with one client, right? And as you scale from there, you onboard newer clients and so on. How do you stay true to product thinking and product-led growth and not get swallowed up by that one large marquee client who can be very demanding?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very pertinent, very relevant question, Arun. More often than not, you will be in that situation where this one customer, which was probably your first find, and you start to work the requirements along with that first customer, and who's your marquee customer that you're talking about. So it does throw you in that slope where you can be only catering to that one requirement or one set of requirements. I think there are a couple of things that I have seen happening in that sense, whether you are a startup just beginning to do the B2B SaaS, or whether you are an existing company venturing into deeper into the B2B SaaS. Both these situations, if you can hold and leverage the customer to validate those requirements also with the other customers in the market or other prospects in the market, then that becomes your scale anchor. Otherwise, what will end up happening is you will end up doing a lot of custom features, custom solutions for that one particular customer that you're talking about. And you end up being what you call as the feature shop for the one customer. And I think the fundamental of this is if you ground yourself in that product thinking right from the beginning, your approach should be, I found this one customer, I am getting this requirement from this one customer. Can I actually go back and validate this with some more customers around or some more prospects around in the market? I think that market approach, reaching back to the market, that approach will help you really scale in the later point in time. And I think one more key here is, as you're looking at those requirements or those set of features, are you thinking customization or are you thinking configurability? If you're right from the beginning, if you're really applying a product thinking, and you will start to think configurability even for the specifics that a one particular customer is asking for. I'll give you an example. In my past life, there was one very similar situation in which we were in, and there was this one customer which was a large credit union conglomerate, and coming back with various requirements. And this was your biggest client. You have to cater to a biggest client because they're giving you the most dollars. So you are catering to that. But in that whole process, we also end up taking those requirements and validating with the general fintech industry. And wherever there was a need for us to do something very specific for this one particular client, which was one of the largest ones, we ended up doing that in a way which helped us making it more configurable, rather than doing the custom features for just that one particular client. So I think applying product thinking right from the beginning, where you are thinking about the scale in the beginning itself as you're interacting with these few set of marquee customers, and then building it on top of it. And that gives you that long-term scales. Otherwise, you end up becoming either a consulting organization or predominantly a services organization. You're not really a product organization to start with.
Great. Thanks, Lokesh. Good insights that stay true to the product thinking, validate whether feature requirements can be scaled across other clients. Any thoughts from you, Siddharth?
So I'll take a startup view stab at this, right? So, all B2B enterprise / business product organizations, right? Invariably, I've seen that 90% of revenue is going to come from the top 10% clients, right? And it's going to be extremely important for these startups because this is what floats their boat. Right? It's important for you to retain them, right? But it's also important for product management teams. When I say teams, I mean marketing, design, product management, key account management, right? To form these very close bonds with these enterprises, to understand, because there's always going to be 200 things that they would want you to do, right? Now, there's going to be a cut, right? How deep is that cut is one thing that you'll have to figure out by making good friends with them, right? Is it a paper cut or is it a knife cut, right? How much will the bleeding be? Right? It's extremely important to figure out, whether it is important for you as an organization staying true to your mission, will it fall in place or not? And I think what Lokesh also said, right, that it could be a good validation of what industry in specific is looking for, right? That you might not be thinking in that direction, but it is something that every organization in that space, large, small, medium, right, might want that, right? So, but at the same time, I think it's a tough call. I don't think there's math behind this. I don't think there's any thumb rule behind this. I think, staying close to those top 10 clients of yours, I think is the best way to figure out what needs to be done on this one.
Absolutely. And some great thoughts there, Siddharth. We'll in fact deep dive into some of them further in the discussion. Any thoughts from you, Srini?
Yeah, I think the key is to focus on the market and not on a specific customer.
Right.
So I think the first customer is really important. So what you need to do is you need to create the right positioning and have a clear message around it. That determines who's your first customer. And obviously the product focus is important. When I say focus, what I've seen is focus means also saying no to hundreds of other interesting ideas, because this is what typically happens when you start with a product. And I think saying is easy, but what we try to do this, I think Lokesh and Sid already gave some very good pointers. So beyond that, from the past 2-3 years, what we are also working as an organization is using this methodology of objectives and key results, where we define this kind of a strategic priorities, which is like objectives, and then have a very well-defined key result, right? For example, what do you want to achieve, which is quantitative. For example, if you're talking about a feature, this new feature should have a 60% adoption. And that has helped us as a product team to really do the things that is enabling this particular key results and have the right focus. So that is how I see for this question.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Any thoughts from Deepak?
Yeah, I'm going to represent a slightly diverse perspective on this panel, representing a $100 billion retailer called Target. And we are building transformation capabilities for them from here in Bangalore. So our journey started with more than one business team wanting to work with us. So the only practical insight that I can share from that is we almost made it a conversation to say, this is something we want somebody to partner on. So at the vision stage, they get to leverage benefits, but we want to build for the enterprise as a service. So I think that was something that has helped us a lot, where we were looking for somebody who can, leverage our capabilities, but at the same time, they know that they're not the single customer here. And what we're trying to do is, to Lokesh's point, validate across different ways of how do we horizontally scale these capabilities. So that's one thing I'd add.
Got it, got it. So insights and thoughts from all of the panel members here. Let's lightly touch upon how it melds or gels with the SaaS part of things, right? So as Lokesh mentioned, avoid becoming a feature factory. However, many enterprise clients do want custom features or configurable features, as you mentioned. And today, you want to encourage them to move on to the cloud. I'm going to use encourage as a software term for force. But anyway, you would want to encourage all your enterprise clients to move onto the cloud. How do you ensure that that transition happens smoothly and you're able to manage that transition with a limited set of features while still offering enough value for your enterprise clients to agree to move to the cloud and continue using your product? Initial thoughts from Srini?
Yeah. It's a great question, and also a question which troubles me a lot at SAP. I mean, for the people who know SAP, right, our customers are typically coming from an on-premise environment where they invested 10 years into the product development, and some of our customers have bigger IT team than I have. So if I go back to them and tell them, hey, on-premise is dead, cloud is the next version, they'll kill me. So it's a very delicate question. So I think the key is to understand this aspect, that customers have invested a lot in the on-premise, but they have a vision to move to the cloud. So how do you go about this? I mean, I think in the cloud world, especially when these customers move, we will not win by providing this kind of a feature compatibility. That's almost impossible because you need like 10, 20 years of development cycle to do this. So the core idea is that when you build the product, you build it as a platform product, which means that, first of all, your product should be the platform, which means that you have the APIs, you have a scalable microservices-based architecture, and you provide the product vision. And customers typically believe in the strong roadmap. So the roadmap also should be an evidence of strategy. It should not be a list of the features. I think that's very important when you go with the customer discussions. So the first stage is to build a product like this, and then especially the B2B SaaS customers whom typically we are serving, they have a big ecosystem. I think in the last panel discussion also that was discussed. So if you build a platform kind of a product, they have a means. I mean, how much ever you build, there is always some feature which a particular customer or a particular region needs it. And you are not going to build it because in on-premise you didn't care for it, but in the cloud you need to care, you need to give away. So this platform is the key, and then the partners and their own customers' IT team can fulfill it. So when in doubt, I always ask myself this. I mean, one rule of thumb for me is great products do less, but they do better.
Thanks. Any thoughts from you, Lokesh, on how to ease the transition to cloud?
Yeah, and totally relate to what Srini is talking about here. We are also in a very similar journey on how you have two products which are, one comes in from on-premise lineage and one is the completely cloud solution. I think there are a couple of things. One is, as you are asking your customers or encouraging, as you said, encouraging your customers to move to cloud, identify who do you want to move first. Okay. And there will always be this journey of you are finding a feature parity between the two solutions, and you are trying to find all those equal parity between the two products, and saying, hey, we are seamless, you can just move from here to there. It's never going to happen. It is probably the easiest one to answer and the toughest one to implement. The key is first identify the customers who are really relevant, who will actually win in this new world with you, being totally customer empathetic in that sense. I think while you may have a reason to move your customers from one to the other side, your customers were with you because they love your product. They have been on that product for a long period of time. You cannot just move them from one to the other side. Second thing is, I think having a product, part of it you will solve yourself. Part of it you will solve with your ecosystem. So there will be certain functionalities, feature sets, solutions, which your larger ecosystem will solve for you as well. And and I think the point that Srini, you made on having those open integration points where your ecosystem can actually come in and solve some of those capabilities while you are in the process of building that in your product or the B2B SaaS product. Balancing these two things out is a key. And one, we often forget the role of the influencers in this whole cycle. Right?
Okay.
And the influencers are the one who actually enable the transition, because they were the one who got the customers for you on your previous version of the product. And as you're trying to nudge them or encourage them to move to the new version of the product, it is important that those influencers are also on board while you want to bring customers on board. So in our case, it is the accountants which are actually influencing also how they see the value in the newer version of your products. You're delivering newer capabilities, much more anytime, anywhere access, any of those things that you're building in a B2B SaaS product. I think it becomes a combination of all these three things that will enable the customers to move from one to the other. And that's how you win that game in stages.
Got it. And thoughts that echo a lot, saying that okay, you can't have full feature parity across these two kinds of infra, these two kind of platforms. Very often, teams fall back on a simplistic way of thinking, saying let's make everything a web page, put the web pages here, and then put the web pages in the app also, and that's it. Your life's sorted. As you mentioned, it never works that way.
Yeah. One more important point I would like to add to that is, since you triggered that thought, it is not about this feature available in the on-premise that you want to make it available in the B2B or the SaaS side of the product. I think it's the context also switches and the changes, right? So it might be that in the newer world, when you're moving the customers from this to the online solution, the way they are operating is itself different, right? You may think about, let's take the SAP example, Srini, that you were talking about. A lot of customers were on premise because they wanted to keep their data with them, because there was a lot of data, lot of concern about the data security and the privacy itself. A lot of that doesn't exist in the newer world. So that context itself, as the tech evolved, has changed. So the confidence also builds over a period of time. So I think keeping that in mind, it's not about this is how we operated here, so you move exactly the same way in the newer world. But don't also at the same time leave the goodness behind, because there was a reason why your customers were there on your on-premise solution, and they loved the product. They used your product there because it was so close to their hearts. I think take the same empathy while you're building this into the new world, instead of forcing them to the new side.
I'll just share one example of what exactly
Yes,
you're
please
saying,
go on.
Lokesh. I think Tally is a classic example of that, right? I mean, all small businesses have Tally installed. There is like hundreds of pirated versions of Tally going around in circles. Ecosystem, which is all the accountants are trained on Tally in school, college, classes, right? All these CAs use Tally, so business to CA interaction is simpler, right? So that's a classic example of however hard you want to push SaaS at them, right? Folks who are used to using keyboard while their eyes are off, right? We will not be willing to take the mouse and click on a page, right? Because they've been trained like that for a very long time, right? So it's very difficult for Tally themselves to displace their desktop software with a SaaS product as such, right? But but I think you're absolutely right there that the ecosystem has to be ripe. The influencer who's the CA has to be ripe, right? Willing to adopt that change, which all the new age CAs now are doing that.
In fact, the point that you just brought about, Siddharth, that people who are trained to using the keyboard while staring at the screen won't immediately move to using the mouse. So that kind of reinforces that you can call it B2B product management or B2C product management or any other kind of product management. Finally, it's a human using a machine, right? And design for the biology of the human. So good insight there. And that's where the UX part of B2B product management also comes in. Maybe Deepak, could you share any thoughts on, or if Srini would have any, on how do you ensure that your customers stay on more or less the latest version when you're on cloud, not kind of regress or insist on being a previous version? I know a lot of enterprise clients, when the key account manager reaches out to them saying, hey, why don't you upgrade to our latest version, which is available on the cloud? The first thing they'll ask is that a bug or a feature? Right? You might be saying that this is a feature that we developed for you, but it probably impacts their workflow or their current processes and things. So any thoughts on that?
I, from my perspective, I think it's about the narrative here, right? Like, if you talk a little bit about, early adopter, first mover, you get these kind of transformational benefits. And this is a partnership where you're going to get a lot of close attention through this whole journey. So I think that is a huge way of encouraging someone to work with you in this context, especially. And as examples, when we have such situations within, and we have a version upgrade coming, and there is 2 or 3 sort of business units that are wanting to leverage this capability, it's more about how we position it to say, we're going to choose who to work with, who's going to be a partner on this journey, because we're trying to use you to build a better functionality and a product and feature and so on. So that does help.
That's the messaging.
It's the messaging, right? Like the minute anybody, anywhere, you talk about upgrades, like iOS 16, I don't want to touch. I'm still doing online reviews because I have no idea. But say someone had engaged me to talk to, this is how practically your life's going to change tomorrow because of this feature, right, up front, and we're giving it to you as an exclusive thing. So I think if you approach the narrative that way versus it being a, to your point, more bugs coming at you. So
Being packaged as features.
exactly.
That's kind of the job description. Sorry, I'm just being facetious there.
Yeah, so that's just my input, yeah.
Right. Let's unpack Siddharth's thought from a little earlier. So you have the problem that you want to have, which is your B2B product has scaled up, and now you have the thorny situation where some of the clients who were valuable probably early on in the early stage of your startup may not be showing the kind of ROI that is demanded now, right? How do you take a non-emotional, a more clinical call in that sense to weed out and stay true to that 90-10 that you mentioned and say, hey, these clients, okay, at some point of time they were close partners, we put in a lot of time and effort, but now we have to say bye without souring the relationship too much.
You should never say bye to your clients, never ever.
Okay.
Right? I think, for product managers, shipping software is not the goal, right?
Right.
Outcomes are, right? So I would never say bye that easy to a client. It will hurt, right? Because you worked so hard, your entire team has worked so hard, so to bring all those clients on board, right? But yeah, I think what one could do is, I think a few things that we did in the past also, and we're doing it now also, is to understand with data, how can you proactively predict that this account is going to be on threat, right? One, right? Second is you need to be close with all these persons of yours, your clients of yours, extremely well. Like I said, you need to make friends with them. Right? There is no way out, right? Great products are not built by sitting in ivory offices, right? You have to be on the ground. You have to be understanding what these merchants need, where are the pain points and all those things, right? Extremely important, right? But if push comes to shove and it happens that a merchant is leaving, right? You try your best to pull them back. It's as simple as that. I mean, I don't think, I don't have an answer to saying that, how do you say bye?
Got it. Yeah. Srini, will just come back to you in a moment. Lokesh, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think if you look at the customers, it depends upon what is your product, the nature of your product.
Okay.
A typical B2B product which has very high engagement cycle, like the customer success manager you talked about,
Right.
where you are getting a lot of these insights from the CSMs on how that particular account is performing, or what is the requirements, or what are the needs which are there. If you are a product which caters to few, but you are able to have that very one-on-one relationship with those customers, you probably know this very early. It's not that you're suddenly getting surprised that this particular account is not performing. So in my past life, I've seen a similar situation like that as well, where you had to make a tough call on, there are certain clients which are probably not going to be there with you, and it is a self-selection that will happen over a period of time, and you will end up losing them, but it's very hard for you to lose them. I think you'll have to weigh it against the cost of continuing the engagement with the client versus the amount of resources that you have at hand. Right? And you may have to gracefully, either just like you sunset a product, you also gracefully sunset an engagement. maybe there's a better version of your product which is serving them better. Maybe there's something else which will help them move on to become more successful. But it's not about you abandon them. I think it's not a choice that you can make. On the other side, when you have a product which operates at scale, right? I can take an example of what we do at Intuit. It's a product which is for small and medium businesses. It's a typical B2B product, but which operates and sells and gets consumed like a B2C product. Right? And you have a product operating at scale. Many times you are only focusing on not one client or two clients. You do not have CSMs in those situations, right? Talking to individual one-on-one clients. But it's a B2B product. So what you do in those situations is you are constantly catering to a market requirement. You're constantly catering to a market at large, not specific customers. So I think it's a context of what is the nature of the product that you're dealing with. And it is always difficult to say. It's not easy to say bye to the customer.
Absolutely. So there's no cut and dry answer. Changing tax a little bit, and we'll unpack the sunset part in a bit. So Srini, your thoughts on integrations, right? And especially in a product like SAP, which is used by millions of clients, not just by millions of users. So clients, unlike any, so the reality is very different from the B2B dream. So the B2B product vendor thinks they are the only product in the enterprise or the client, but the reality is very different. That the client is using multiple products from multiple vendors across business units, different SBUs, and across geographies. That is within the client itself. And increasingly, you will find that clients want the vendor's B2B product to be integrated across their supply chain, their suppliers, distributors, and so on, right? So it's a whole supply chain integration. It's a mammoth client with multiple BUs and things like that. So do integration features and ease of use or ease of networking or ease of interoperability with possibly competitor products, do that play a role in scaling and helping this?
Absolutely. I think in today's situation, right, this is a very pertinent question. I think maybe some years ago, typically the customer went for the same vendor because of the stability, because of the roadmap, right? I mean, they bought all the suite of the products from the same vendor. Now, more and more in my discussions with the customer, that I see that those days are over. The customers say, yeah, particular company is doing well here, I will go here for CRM, maybe here a particular company is doing well with ERP, I'll go with this. And probably there are hundreds of other industry solutions, right, which are providing a particular capability that the customer needs. So I think what we have embedded into our product management practice is not looking product in a silo. Like, yeah, product does a particular functionality really well, that's great, but that's not enough for the customer. Customer is asking, hey, your product is giving me some features and some functionality, but do you understand my business? This is my end-to-end business. How do you fulfill this particular value and add me value? So I think one approach could be to look at this whole thing as not a product functionality, but as an end-to-end scenario. For example, maybe let's take a particular customer who's in maybe selling business, right? Let's take this scenario as code to cash. So maybe the customer is first of all interested in generating the code, translating it to the order, then invoice, fulfillment, and then the revenue recognition. And this is very key to the customer, right? I mean, if I say, yeah, you got the money, but yeah, maybe the revenue recognition doesn't work because this integration is missing, that's not going to fly. So that's where the integration plays really an important role. And integration is also a technology, but I think from the product perspective, what is key is you as a product manager, we as a product manager have really the vision of this end-to-end functionality, right? How is this supposed to work for the customer? And what we saw, I think you bought a question of different vendors, but even within the same vendor, assume that customer went for the same vendor. You see that today because of the inorganic growth, right? Different products are there with different architecture, different APIs, etc., and different user experience, I think, which Lokesh you bought.
Absolutely. In fact, even just different configurations. You may have 2 instances of SAP in just 2 business units of a function that don't talk to each other, right? But please go on.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's a very pertinent issue. I think that's where I think the integration plays a role. And from the product management perspective, having this end-to-end vision, right, and delivering really this kind of a key message. Hey, we are there for your business. I mean, we understand your business. So the core thing is industry expertise, and then the right technical enablement that we are talking about. And what I see also in the market is what you also see is right. More and more B2B companies are going for integration platform. I think some of the companies recently made some acquisitions, etc., where they didn't have it. So that's a key play in the playbook to really ensure that the customer's business needs are fulfilled.
Thoughts from you, Deepak?
Yeah, from our context, and I think about our experience with supply chain sort of transformation capabilities sort of being built out of Bangalore, and large enterprises I represent, like Target, right, who are at a point of startup environment, legacy systems, modernization, a ton of vendors, and a ton of new things happening, and the ecosystem is today a bit of a khichdi, if I may use that word, right? The biggest USP for how we sort of got our pitch to say we work is because of the fact that we demonstrated integration as one of the facets of how a modular, scalable, architecture enables ease. Because the first thing business leaders sort of in our context look at is, I don't want another tool, another capability that tomorrow is going to potentially have issues with our existing legacy modernization plans. So the top of the list for us was to really demonstrate and articulate why integration is one of our core suite of capabilities. So I definitely think it's a huge thing today, especially in the environment and the context we operate in. And the way you're able to articulate is a big factor in sort of success too.
Thanks, Deepak. I'll just unpack the thought that Lokesh put, but Siddharth, you could probably take a stab at that. How do you make the decision between sunsetting and pivoting, right? Especially in a B2B context where probably already have some customers, and for whatever reason the business model is not working, revenue, it could be anything. Business context has changed, the landscape has changed, and you have to make a hard call between sunset versus pivot. And how do you make that?
See, I think it's always difficult. I don't think we live in a world which is like unlimited resources all the time.
Am I giving you only the hard questions?
Yeah, you're giving me all the sad ones. Sunset merchants, sunset customers, sunset products. Yeah, so, in a resource-constrained world, I think it's always going to be a difficult call to make, right? Because every penny of revenue for the organization is always going to be important. You always are going to be trying to retain those merchants, those clients of yours, the money you make from them for life, if at all possible. Right? But there is always going to be this point of time where you have to go on, right? You have to build the next version of the product, the existing one. You try your best to move them there in a most seamless fashion you can, right? But yeah, I mean, it's always going to be tough, right? But at some point you take a call because you can't keep investing into a product which is not going to help you scale tomorrow, right? You always need to think 5 years down the line, what is the best thing I'll have to do to bring the organization to the next stage,
right?
And if this product is not going to work out, you have to build a new one, and you have to figure out a way to move these clients from A to B.
Right. Any examples from, say, your experience?
Oh yeah,
I mean,
so payments world, things change so fast, right? We have so many, legacy products that we still live with, right? But we're trying to build this one PayU platform now where we're able to figure out all capabilities of the organization and offer it to our clients, right? But there is erstwhile versions of those products also, which are still live, and how do you help those users of those products to migrate seamlessly to these new ones, right? Extremely tough things to do, extremely long-term projects, but have to be done.
Absolutely. In fact, they say the graveyard of digital transformation projects is strewn with the corpses of super apps and the one thing to rule them all and so on. Any thoughts from you, Lokesh?
Yeah, a couple of things. I want to go back to the previous thread that Deepak was talking about. I think on the integration point, we don't exist as a unique or the only product that our customers are using it. And this is not only true for large large products and complex products like SAP, and which are used by the larger clients or the LEs as we call them. It's also true for the SMBs, and even smaller and medium businesses, they are using a suite of products for running their business. And one thing that if as product people we understand that our customers are in our product not because they like to use our product, but our product enables something for them which helps them run the business better. And it's just part of their larger scheme of things of running their business that they're also using your product. And in that context, they are also using multiple other products which are around you or your product, and your awareness about those is very, very important. So I may be an accounting product sitting at the center of all their financial solution, all their financial information, but there's also another suite of products that I'm offering, which is a payroll solution for their employees. It's also a payment solution for the online and digital payments that they're doing. So it's a suite of things around the core product that is existing. And even if it's your own product or if it's the product from the ecosystem, you have to think of integration right from the beginning. It cannot be, you are not operating in a silo. So, and that helps you get scales at a later stage as well. Coming back to the point of the sunset that you're talking about.
Or pivot.
I think the sunset and the pivot, it's not about, you're not going to leave your customers high and dry. So are you offering an alternative solution, either out of your own portfolio, or is there another solution that your customers are able to leverage as they move from one to the other? And that has to be a very thoughtful and very, very deliberate exercise for you to start moving the customers from one to the other. And I think that is the key. You cannot lose a customer here unless you are sure of winning a customer here. Right? You're not just suddenly sunsetting a product. It's a very, very thoughtful process. And even when this applies the same when you're exiting or we're trying to sunset one particular product in a particular market.
Okay.
Right. So you will often have these situations. You are toning down a particular product offering in a particular market, and we did that multiple times. We are very thoughtful of, as you're scaling down on that product, you have an alternative building up already. So it's not a sudden switch that you're asking customers to make because they have a business to run. They have a dependency on what you are offering. So I think that thoughtfulness is very, very key as you make the decisions on either bringing down a product or pivoting.
Absolutely. In fact, on the previous point about integrations, I remember when we were speaking earlier, the landscape is a little different in the B2C world versus B2B world. I think all the panelists have confirmed that integrations definitely across different products in your portfolio and preferably across products in the entire ecosystem, even competitors and things are very important. Compare that to the B2C world where you have the Windows versus Mac or Android versus iOS kind of debate where there are closed wall secret garden kind of ecosystems and the open interoperable ecosystem. So the landscape is quite different there. So great to hear those thoughts. Last question to the panel after before which we open up, after which we'll open up for questions from the audience. So when you are faced with an act of God kind of situation or a shock to the ecosystem, like for example the pandemic came out of the blue, everyone went through a lot of churn and so on. How do you as a B2B product solution provider set up your PM team and your customer success team for success in guiding your clients through that kind of a shock? Any thoughts from you, Deepak?
I think representing sort of broadly digital transformation capabilities and so on, of course the impetus, the excitement, traction quadrupled as the pandemic sort of hit, and especially in the context of a very large retailer, general merchandise retailer, partly accelerating their e-commerce sort of space. And to the question, one thing I distinctly remember through our experience was just, being able to meet business leaders where they're at in a way that is resonating with the challenging environment and not placing our agenda ahead of it, but representing it as this is how we can partner and here are the things we need to get there. So I think
any examples you could?
Yeah, I again go back to this place where we started with some of these capabilities in the supply chain, and from being able to, we had two things happening at the same time. Tremendous growth, $30–40 billion of growth in a year, which is unheard of, and tremendous supply chain complexities to meet that growth at the same time. So when I think of the inventory management space within Target, like we had very basic tactical issues around out of stock, and how do we even understand where it is sitting, the stock that we're trying to fulfill in a store. And the existing legacy systems were representing points of the whole part, right? You'd get to know last mile distinctly, you'd get to know, upstream distinctly. And we just positioned a way of saying that what we're going to try and give visibility around this is end-to-end, very basic capability right now, which will evolve over time, but at just one single source of information. That messaging just resonated so much with them that they were able to quickly accelerate investment to help bring that to life, fully knowing that this is a very basic attempt at doing this.
Right. How about any thoughts from Srini? So SAP itself is a big monster, I'm sure. That would have also gone through a lot of uncertainty, unknowns during the pandemic, and its whole portfolio of clients. So how did you deal with that?
Absolutely. I think without a doubt, the pandemic disrupted the complete supply chain, right? Maybe let's take an example of car booking process. Maybe 3 years ago, you went for booking a car. Dealer said, sir, 2 weeks. You said, hey, next week is my wife's birthday. Yeah, he said, yeah, 1 week, I'll give you the car. Today, if you go for booking a car, if he says 1 year, you are happy. Yeah, at least I'm getting a car, right? So that's the impact you see. So I think that also puts a lot of pressure on our customers, and also as a company like SAP, right? We are forced to think about new things. So essentially in the past 2 years, right, we have created a new breed of, maybe new suite of solution, which is called as networked solution. So just to give you an example, I mean, again, when I talk to OEMs like BMW, I mean, they need to understand what is that my suppliers are producing. I mean, we are not talking about this tier 1 supplier with whom BMW is in directly touch with. That supplier depends on another supplier in somewhere in Czech, somewhere in Ukraine or wherever. So they don't have this kind of a visibility on what is this tier N supplier producing. And this tier 1 supplier, forget, they don't know BMW itself. Maybe that's a big company for us. So that's the situation. So I think what we are going more from the product management perspective is creating this kind of a network solution where we are bringing all the players in the value chain into one kind of a solution. OEMs, suppliers. One classic example, what I quoted now is maybe if the suppliers know what is that demand at BMW side, and similarly, if BMW knows what is the capacity at my supplier's end, hopefully they can create a better product, or at least they know that, yeah, this is the waiting period. This doesn't lead to any wastage because the suppliers are not creating something competing. So that's how we are looking at it. But it's easier than said. I mean, it has its own challenges, right? First of all, it needs a high level of trust amongst the player. And I think Lokesh mentioned it, data security is very important.
Right.
And the third aspect is data sovereignty. Because, yeah, just because you're in the value chain, no supplier is going to lose their competitive advantages. So that has to be preserved. So from the product management perspective, we need to bring all these aspects so that we create a solution that works for all the players in the value chain.
So what I'm hearing is good visibility across the entire value chain while keeping data governance still intact.
Exactly.
Right. We have a couple of minutes for a few quick questions to the panel. So anyone, if your question is for a certain panelist, please mention that. Yes, please.
Hi, this question is for all the panelists. So if a company is currently servicing SMBs and now want to switch over to LEs, what advice would you give them? How to transform the B2B product, SaaS product, from one that is serving a SMB kind of a setup to one that has to go in and compete with the large enterprises along with the other players who are already there in that space.
Sorry, what's your name?
Sorry, my name is Chanel. I work with Target.
Thanks, Chanel. I think it's a very, very good question in terms of the transition as you grow in the organization and the product grows in the life cycle. I'll take a stab at it, and please feel free to join. as your product is growing, as your customers, the customers who are using the product, they are also growing, right? So many times you'll see the organic situation where your very small customers are becoming SMBs, and they are becoming more mid-market customers, and they are becoming probably further down the line in large enterprise. In those situations, it's a very organic and natural learning that you're going through along with your customers. You probably would have two situations. One is either you are a large enterprise company, a large enterprise provider, coming down the market and also thinking about the mid-market or the SMBs, or the situation that you're talking about where you are an SMB and you are thinking about catering to the large enterprises. I think do not apply the same set of principles in either of these paths that you take. We have seen enough and many examples where a large enterprise company trying to go into catering to SMB, just because the way you built a large enterprise product was very highly complex, and the whole processes around that is very different, you ended up applying the same set of principle as a product team to us SMB, a solution. You will not find you have to draw that chart again. And I think the same applies when you're going from the other way around as well. If you try to apply the same set of principles that a small company, a small or medium company is using a product in a way, you will end up missing the whole boat, because the larger enterprises have the far more complex equations running inside those organizations. They have a multitude of systems running in those organizations. You have to think about integration right from the beginning. You have to think about the complex processes right from the beginning. I think that you have to redraw these two. Right? But there's also an intermediate piece, right, where maybe the linking that I can call it here, where you may be a small and medium player, so a small and medium enterprise player, moving on to a mid-market, which is somewhere in between, not really the large. There again, you have to go and root yourself in the customer empathy to understand what is that your customer really wants. They have a slightly more complex needs. They have got slightly more integration requirements, but they are not still as large as what your LEs are or large enterprise customers are. But they are not anymore the same set of customers who you were dealing with earlier as an SMB. So your reliability becomes more crucial now, because these mid-market customers require you to be far more reliable. So the customer persona is evolving. So you have to stay grounded in the customer persona as you are catering to any of these three things that we are just mentioning.
Got it. We'll have some words from Siddharth, but we are soon out of time. So yes.
Yeah, I'm just saying there are not a lot of good examples in this world of organizations who've been able to do both. Right, who've been able to capture the large enterprise and the SME markets both, right? So you need to understand why you want to do it. I think the whole world wants to have the entire pie, right? But I think it's very important to stay true to your truth and understand your capabilities, understand your strengths, and build on them. Yeah.
Right. So thank you very much, panelists. I think great panel discussion. We spoke about how to work requirements with marquee clients and ensure that don't become a feature factory. Make sure your product is customizable and configurable. Have a roadmap that talks to your strategy, not just a plan with dates and say, okay, these are a bunch of features that we are throwing out at you. We spoke about how B2B product management still has the elements of human-centered design, human interaction, and how to make the transition with integrations, how to help or ease the transition to cloud. So great topics, great thoughts. Thank you very much. Big round of applause for them, please.
Thank you very much, panel, for the insightful session.